So the Chicago Sky are currently trying to hire Curt Miller. If anyone can tell me, by the way, how to change my laptop from French, I actually don't know why it's French. I didn't buy it in France. It just randomly changed to French one day, and I haven't been able to fix it. But you've got Curt Miller here. And yeah, like, you can see right here that the Sky are interested. The Sky are one of 3 vacancies along with Sparks and Dream with a coaching vacancy, but sources say the number could increase in the coming weeks. And I cannot read that, but screw it. Let's just take a look. I'm not gonna. We all know how to bypass paywall. If you don't, you can look it up. But I'm not gonna do it here on video. But Stephanie White, 1, is not going to the Sky. 2, she's not going anywhere apparently. But 3, like, this is one thing that I really don't understand. So many people were complaining, and they were like, the Sparks hired a search firm specializing in sports to assist, and like the Sky are just using their GM. And I'm like, man, I'm sorry. If you're like, that's the GM's job. Like, I'm sorry, you don't need a search firm to let people know that the best available coach right now is Curt Miller. Like, you don't need a search firm to tell you that the best coach that got fired is Curt Miller. And like, these are where it's like, why would you, like, you don't need a search firm for a coach. I'm sorry, that's one of the dumbest things I'd ever heard with the Sparks. They were like, the Sparks are doing this to find their coach. And it's like, man, what are you doing? Like, you don't need to do that. If not, you go to freaking good college teams and try to poach their coaches. Like, it's not the hardest thing in the world to do. Like, you could probably get some weird analytics that will tell you a coach in freaking Uzbekistan is the right coach. It's probably not the ideal thing. It's like Curt Miller couldn't make his mind up on a starting 5. Like, yeah. So Curt, who lost more than teaspoon. Curt, who doesn't know how to adjust lineups to give his team a chance. I'm pretty sure they were tanking. And this is the worst. This is the one thing where I'm like, that people do not understand about Curt Miller. They're like, who didn't properly manage Rickea Jackson. Why was Rickea Jackson not properly managed in people's eyes? And this is the one thing I have a real problem with. And it's like, this is the more of the WNBA fans are not sports fans situation, where it's like, apparently Curt Miller didn't manage Rickea Jackson because he didn't play her 25 minutes a game to start the season when she was not ready. Not only was she not ready, she is basically as much said as she wasn't ready. The reality of Curt Miller as a coach is he's not going to... There are ways of developing players. Like, everybody talks about how great the San Antonio Spurs are for developing players, but the reason why the Spurs are so good is because they're just good at developing players. Like, nobody says the Spurs are good at developing players because they play rookies 40 minutes a game. No. The Spurs are good at developing players because you get built, you buy into the culture, and a lot of time by years 2, 3, 4, you become that type of player. Whereas a lot of WNBA people think development is playing them right away and making them do things they're bad at. Like, I'm sorry, I think Teresa Weatherspoon, as much as she helped initially with Angel Reese's development, I think she helped with her confidence, which is a big part of basketball. I think a big reason why Angel Reese very clearly barely picked up a basketball over the Olympic break was because of Teresa Weatherspoon. Like, I think a proper development coach not benches Angel Reese because she showed she was a really good player, but doesn't play her 40 minutes a game, doesn't make her go for those double-doubles. I think the double-doubles harmed the development of Angel Reese. Because the reality is that how good Angel Reese is in 5 years from now is more important than Angel Reese's double-double streak. But the reality is that you could very much see it in her head. It was double-double equals good game, which is the worst thing for the development of a player. Even though Rickea Jackson from minute 1 was able to come in and score, Curt Miller basically said, until you improve your defense, you're not playing, or you're barely playing. And as her defense got better, her minutes got better. And by the end of the year, Rickea Jackson was their best player. That's how you develop a player. You don't develop a player by saying, Rickea, you're coming into the game where we're letting you do whatever the hell you want. And you know, you can't play defense. Cool. We're not going to try to get you better at defense. Obviously, there are some times where it's like some players are just too good where you can't like do that with them, like a Caitlin Clark, whose defense is still very poor. Very poor. Better than what Rickea Jackson came into the league with. But like, again, you couldn't bench Caitlin Clark because the team sucked without her. But it's one of those things where it's like, Rickea Jackson at the end of the year, I think the vast majority of people, this is when we talk about rookie development, people were like, Rickea Jackson would have been in the Rookie of the Year conversations if she'd played from the start of the year. And it's like, no, the reason why Rickea Jackson was so good at the end of the year was because of the development of Rickea Jackson. Rickea Jackson's development from the start to the end of the year was huge. And that's the reason why people are like, oh, you know, she would have been in those conversations. The reality is that being in the Rookie of the Year conversations is less important than developing the player. And that is what he did with Rickea Jackson. He did a great job of developing Rickea Jackson. He was the coach that put the ball in Alyssa Thomas's hands for the Connecticut Sun. He's a 2-time coach of the year. He turned Alyssa Thomas from like just, you know, a defensive-oriented power forward averaging a double single to a point forward extraordinaire who's going to go down as one of the 30 greatest players of all time. He took over, when he took over the Connecticut Sun, Jonquel Jones was a 10-minute-a-game bench player. By the time he left, in his first year, she won Most Improved Player, and in his last year, she won the MVP. So he's got 2 Most Improved Players. He did a great job with Rickea Jackson development. And this is the problem with the situation is people that don't know basketball think development is only based on her stats for the season. Development is literally how good she is from the start to the end of their tenure working together. And the reality is Rickea Jackson made a much bigger improvement from start to the end of the year than either of the Chicago Sky rookies did. Camila Cardoso regressed. The best I saw Camila Cardoso look was in their first game against Indiana, when she came off in limited minutes and looked unguardable. Cardoso regressed as a player. Angel Reese didn't regress as a player, but she didn't really make that improvement. The one thing people were really wrong about with Angel Reese was how WNBA ready she was. She was ready to play big minutes from day one. The problem is that Angel Reese at the end of the year was no better than Angel Reese at the start of the year. Yeah, she had games where she scored more points. If you're going to play 40 minutes a game and shoot 14 times a night, there's going to be games where you get hot and you score. That's not development. The development would have been if by the end of the year, she had improved to becoming a 50% shooter from layups. If she could make half of her layups by the end of the year, now that's an improvement. If she could hit maybe 1 jump shot a game, that's an improvement. But the problem is that I thought Teresa Weatherspoon did a great job for the confidence of an Angel Reese. I don't think she developed it. And that's the problem is with all this, is that Curt Miller is the perfect choice. And I mean that. He is the perfect choice. Until he signed with the Sparks, which was a dumb decision by him, by the way. Signing with Sparks was not smart. He was like the 3rd highest win percentage coach in the history of the WNBA. He was considered one of the better coaches in the history of the league. Until he made a bad decision to sign with the Sparks, who were tanking. I'm sorry, the Sparks sucked. They sucked. Like Dearica Hamby, we saw in the All-Star game, we saw in the Olympics, that Dearica Hamby is not an all-WNBA player. Curt Miller had her playing like one. Curt Miller lost 3 of his starters. Cameron Brink, Lexi Brown, Ari McDonald. He literally, his point guard rotation were 2 hardship contract players in Odyssey Sims and Crystal Dangerfield. Like, his point guards were on hardship contracts. Azurá Stevens was fine at center. Like, he was starting Steph Talbot at one stage during the year. Like, the Sparks sucked. And they were trying to lose. But if you're looking at WNBA coaching vacancies, yeah, there might be a better option getting someone from the college game or someone maybe recently out of the college game. But for the Chicago Sky, if you are looking at the most recently fired coaches in like Noelle Quinn or Curt Miller is 100 times better. And if you can get Curt Miller on the cheap, he's great. Players like playing for him. That is also something that you can tell. Players like playing for him. You will sign free agents will play for Curt Miller. And I can guarantee you the Chicago Sky will be better than they were last year with Curt Miller. I can almost guarantee you that. The only issue is Curt Miller in, Kennedy Carter's gone. Now that's like the one actual issue with Curt Miller, is that if you want to keep Kennedy Carter, he's like, you don't bring in Curt Miller. Curt Miller, literally, she was one of 2 players under contract with the Sparks. And also, by the way, when he signed with the Sparks, there were 2 players under contract in the summer of 2023. And I mean that. 2 players under contract. But yeah, I don't know. Either way, it is I think this will be a really good hire for the Chicago Sky. Obviously, Sky fans don't think so. And their reasoning is if they hire him, it's racist. And he ruined Rickea Jackson. Even though Rickea Jackson, in fact, if we're talking about rookies' development throughout the year, Caitlin Clark probably had the, I'll say Clark, Rikia, from the 2024 draft class, start to finish of the year, how much they improved as a player. I'll go Clark, Rikia. That's it. Like, they are the two best, most improved rookies throughout the year. And I think he probably would have done the same with Cameron Brink. Even though people talking about how he ruined Rikia Jackson, the reality is that I think if you ask 70% of WNBA fans who right now you would take, if there was a redraft, who would go number 2, I think 70% of people would say Rikia Jackson. And Rikia Jackson, within the first month of the year, even when Rikia started playing more, no one would have considered even close to being an all-star, close to Angel Reese. But by the end of the year, that's where Rikia Jackson was. So it is what it is. This would be a super smart signing from the Chicago Sky. And it seems like they don't care about social media, thankfully. So, and I don't think their GM gives a damn about whether or not they consider him racist for hiring the best available coach or not. He is the best available coach. But I really do hope the Chicago Sky go fully left field. I've seen some site where the betting odds and the current favorite, or not the current favorite, the second favorite or something, is Cheryl Swoops. Go sign Cheryl Swoops. That would be the best thing ever. Go sign Cheryl Swoops. Go get Kennedy Carter back and go win 7 games next year. It would be the best thing for me personally. The best thing for me is the Chicago Sky is a shit show because, less views, the more crazy stuff that goes on, the more views there is. But the reality is that for the sake of the Chicago Sky, for the sake of Angel Reese, for the sake of Camila Cardoso, Curt Miller is the best option. He just, without question, is.